Joe.
How do you think we stand now compared to those days with the problem of drug addiction?
Well, right now we're running into we'll take a drug and a simple drug, heroin. At that time when I was working with it 55 years ago, 58 years ago, it was a drug that had 7% power base of fentanyl, which is another combination that they put in now, mixing it with heroin at 7%. Now it's 47% more potentially dangerous than before. The powder base that they put in, again, can be so much more addictive. It can take complete control of a person. So the drugs are changing, they're getting more powerful, and they're getting more and more dependent then by way of different chemicals that you don't know what they're putting in. They're mixing it all up and you don't know what you're getting. Before, heroin was pretty consistent, be the same thing as alcoholic. You wouldn't have any kind of difference in the treating of one to the other. But now it's a very different kind of drug. It's a very different kind of drug because of the chemicals they're putting into the now new combination of services.
The District of Columbia, Colorado, Oregon, Washington, and Alaska have legalized marijuana for recreational use. Your thoughts about that?
It's a progressive, insidious disease by definition that I gave you a few minutes ago. Progressive. Now, the tolerance, it goes into the body, the tolerance tissue accepts it, it builds up a demand to have more. So when you take even this drug, even though medically it'll help different people to overcome the pain and the difficulty, I worry about those that are taking it in due time that will be recreational. So you open a door and you're not going to close it. It's going to be bigger and bigger. There are really good things going on in the law now that New York State has implemented, but there's a danger out there that is really unbelievably, it's yet unseen. The people don't know the monster that we have in a progressive, insidious disease. And whatever kind of chemical you're going to use, you have to be careful. A lot of people thought oxycodone was a great thing, but look at the kind of dilemma that we're caught with that, because that, again, builds up tolerance in the tissue. If you build up tolerance, you're going to demand more. The drug takes the drug takes the man, and that's the way I look at it.
Maureen Dowd wrote in a column a few months ago, an international column, that she had been out to Colorado and bought some candy that was marijuana candy, and I guess it was sort of shaped like a Hershey bar.
Yeah.
And she ate it like a Hershey bar, and she thought she was going to die the way it was, and she wrote about her experience. And evidently, people don't know out there that you would only take one piece of the candy instead of like you would eat a whole Hershey bar. Are you hearing things like that?
Well, we've always had bills in the Senate and in the Assembly here in New York State. We call them the Moose Booze bills, or the Bonbon bill. The bonbons are nice, but you put brandy inside of them, and then they become dangerous to kids. Because when you put candy on the table, the kids are caught. And then the other thing is the Moose Booze, what we call the Moose bills, would be the bill that offered people to have milkshakes with alcohol in. Well, you get the sweet taste, and the kids go for that sweet taste, and they drink that. And so we've always been very careful and very defensive to stop that legislation. I've been working in that field up there for a long, long time, just to try to do the changing of the law in '73. After 14 years of doing it, I found that I had 35,000 meetings to change the law in 14 years of my life. And the law was changed to destigmatize, to decriminalize, and make it then a disease and not a crime. And that was the major accomplishment of my life.
Medical marijuana is now legal in New York State. Your thoughts on the medical marijuana facilities?
Well, they're making it now, legalizing it for medical use, which is, I think, good. But we've always had Marinol, which is a pill that you could take. You could go get a prescription and take Marinol, which is pretty much the same kind of ball game, the same pill. And it's the same opportunity of getting that kind of medication. So I worry about the open door. I worry about that very much, because I can see that there are many different ways that you have difficulty controlling the production of it, to see that, because they'll enhance the production and make it with other things a lot more palatable to those that are in need. When you have that, you're looking at the mesolimbic area of the brain, which is the craving part of the brain with the two components, the cortex and the mesolimbic, the pleasure center of the brain. Every drug appeals to that pleasure center. We talk about the intelligence over the emotions, and the emotions are all controlled by that mesolimbic area of the brain, and that mesolimbic area will defeat the drug, and by way of the drug, the thinking process. So you do stupid things. People who are addicted are doing a lot of stupid things.
Many states where they have medical marijuana, which is legal, just distribute it through a pharmacy because there's a distribution system already in place. Here in New York State, we're having the medical marijuana facility. What do you think of the difference here in New York State? Do you think it's necessary to have a specific facility, or?
I like to see it controlled.
Okay, then really you like the idea.
I like the idea of it controlled, because I know we're caught with a lot of other drugs that are, and I can bring you downtown Albany and then bring you right to the corner where all of this is happening right now. They get prescriptions, they sell the prescriptions. So a lot of that is happening right now, and they're doing it right now, and I can't avoid it. You know, it's.
Father Peter Young Industries, you have the Altamont program, which helps so many people throughout New York State, from Buffalo down to New York City. Talk about the Altamont program a little bit.
Well, this happened when I was then in '76. I left the South End and I went to work in the prison system. And in prison, you know, you do the intake interviews. We've done over 100 and some thousand of these intake interviews, and each one would be pretty much the same. I started taking this or that drug, and then this is where I had to go to feed the habit. I did these illegal things, and again, you meet that. So I opened up a program within the Department of Corrections that offered then 41,000 people a day a program for their recovery. And that's where I really enjoyed life for all of the time until I retired and then came back into Albany.
Tell us about the stool, the three-legged stool.
Well, I just keep thinking and you know, saying we have to have the return. You go down when you're drinking and drugging, and you have to find that day return back up. You have to recreate the dignity of a job. You have to recreate a decent, safe, clean, sober place to live. And then you have to get the thinking in your head, I have an illness, I have a contagious kind of, not contagious, but hereditary kind of problem, where I have a predisposition to drink and drug more than others. And when you understand that you have a disease, and you try to avoid taking it, similar to a diabetic. A diabetic person has to be careful how they put whatever they put in by way of sugar content in their system, because it'll take them down that wrong road. The same with an alcoholic. You have to be able to prevent that person from doing detrimental kind of difficulties with their body, and that's what I think, you know, the stool does. We give them the foundation of recovery, the treatment, and then we give them an opportunity of training for a job, and then from the training of a job, then a place where they can do what they need to do by way of residential housing.
And you have a pretty good job placement rate for folks who go through your training, don't you?
Well, we find it necessary. It's an integral part of our program. You have to balance it out. They all are all important by way of the product of recovery. If you want recovery, you've got to establish the other things that need to be with recovery. And that's where we've been. Now, we've been 121 locations around the state. We have about 16 to 18,000 people a day in our program. So when you got that 18 to so thousand a day, you're in Buffalo, you're in Rochester, you're in every city, and you're right up to the Canadian border. So we are scattered all over. Now we've had some problems that we can consolidate them and try to get back into our smaller footprint because of the many things here that they're concerned about. We know we haven't done, you know, kind of the necessary paperwork or things, as dotting of the I and the crossing of the T. So we're aware that we've made mistakes. We've gone out to serve the people too quickly without doing our foundation.
Tell us about the Vesta Community Housing.
Well, Vesta, we try to buy or work with repairing housing, so it creates jobs. We do the work, we try to renovate the housing, and then we try to find a place to put them in a bus line, basically. Very close. You got to get them in a bus line, and then put them in a community where they are received affirmatively and warmly by a community. We don't want to create hostility. You got to be able to say, do you permit these men to come in the community, these women to come in? We established a lot of halfway houses, three-quarter way houses, places where they can come in and live in a very happy kind of an environment.